So what they do is they do election interference, which is court cases, and let's try and tie him up, and let's take as much of his money as possible. I respect the appellate division for substantially reducing that ridiculous amount of money that was put on by a corrupt judge.
Authorities will pause enforcing former President Donald Trump and the Trump Organization's $464 million ruling if Trump posts $175 million within 10 days. Now, this is a big win for Trump, and he has already vowed to appeal the decision with the Trump business dealing case regardless, but that lowering to $175 million, buying him some more flexibility. It also means that if Trump pays it within 10 days, that New York Attorney General Letitia James cannot be able to begin seizing Trump's assets. Meanwhile, on a separate case, Trump is back in a New York courtroom for the Stormy Daniels hush money payment case. Joining me now with the latest is the Hill's Mychael Schnell. Schnell, big win for Trump up in New York, no?
Yeah, it's a big win for Trump, Kevin, but $175 million is still a lot of money. Now, it's not $464 million, so that's one thing for the former president, but he still has to cough up that cash within the amount of time the court said within 10 days. He says he's going to pay it, but we'll see if he can put his money where his mouth is and if he's actually able to post this bond.
Well, see, what I find fascinating is that if he does pay it, then Letitia James is not going to be able to bring in the trucks in front of Trump Tower or go on up to the golf courses and Jersey and all of these other types of seizing of the assets, which would have really been a huge blunder for him and his presidential campaign, and he would have lost several news cycles, not to mention could have hurt his presidential campaign. So the assets are on hold for now, right?
Yeah, that's the understanding. But look, this isn't the end of it, right? Trump is just trying to put up this bond so Letitia James can't collect the judgment that he was hit with, that multi-million-dollar judgment as he goes through the appeals process. So look, if he's turned away at the appeals process, then I guess we're still back at square one because he's got to pay his judgment. So this is just an ongoing situation. And as Trump has tried to do in all of his court proceedings and in all of his legal entanglements, it's delay, try to kick all this until after the November elections. And today, he had that victory, being that it's a smaller amount of money he has to pay. He's got 10 more days to do it. If he does do it, then we're going to just continue with that appeals process.
A lot of journalists have sort of stuck their nose up at Truth Social, and I get it in terms of the controversial posts that the former president has posted. I've always been more interested in the business side of what Jason Miller has launched with Truth Social, the ultra-conservative tech platform. And there's been some reporting now that if Truth Social goes public because of a merger with Digital World Acquisition Corporation, that actually might be the way for Trump to unlock billions of dollars potentially for him to pay his court tabs. So the business side of what he's launched since leaving the White House with Truth Social, really remarkable. And now it could actually end up being publicly traded.
Yes, absolutely. With the investors approving that merger so Truth Social can go public. That is the case. But my understanding of this, Kevin, is that despite the millions upon millions of dollars of stake that Trump has in this company, there's still time constraints about when he can actually sell off his stake and get the money from that investment. Now, I believe it's about 6 months typically that could be that time frame could be decreased depending on whether some folks make different decisions on his behalf. But it may not help him with that cash dash in the near term in terms of getting this bond paid quickly and not, preventing Letitia James from collecting on that judgment as he goes through the appeals process. So, absolutely, Truth Social going public could bring in a lot of cash for Trump, but maybe not at the current moment, maybe down the road. Still helpful, but he's got a lot of legal issues happening right now where the extra cash would absolutely be helpful.
It only takes 6 months to make a company go public. How hard can it be? A lot can happen. Who am I to say that? April 15th, that's the judgment, Mike, or that's rather when the jury goes into deliberations, rather. I'm hearing from our control room with regards to the Stormy Daniels hush money case. This is the one that has, according to the Decision Desk HQ polling, has not really had an impact on independent or swing voters, but still another key deadline coming up on the Stormy Daniels case for Trump.
And I don't know how you can have a trial that's going on right in the middle of an election. Not fair. Not fair.
Yeah, and again, the optics aren't great for the former president, right, Kevin? He's still crisscrossing the nation, going from campaign stop to courtroom. He would probably want to spend more time on the campaign, but he has to go to all these court appearances. I think Trump's allies and Trump's team would actually spin it as a positive, saying that this is something that riles up his base and invigorates his voters and his supporters on the ground. So it could be a good thing there. But these are just distractions, right? Though at the end of the day, it doesn't really seem like many of his supporters in the polls really care that much, so it may not have that much of a dent. But it's just an opportunity for more curveballs in this race, especially as we get closer to November.
Yeah, mark your calendars. That's when that Stormy Daniels trial starts on April 15th. All right, back to Congress. The House is in recess, but will Speaker Johnson have a job when he gets back, or is MTG about to yank him from office?
Yeah, he'll have a job when they get back from recess. The question is for how long? MTG on Friday filing that motion to vacate, and it was just filing, Kevin. She didn't actually pull the trigger of actually forcing a vote on ousting Johnson. So it was sort of a move that had no consequence whatsoever. But what she called it was a warning, a pink slip for the speaker to let him know that she is not supportive of how he has led this conference. She believes that somebody else should be atop the GOP conference, and warning that at any moment she could trigger a vote on Johnson's ouster. Now, I was talking to her on Friday. I asked her directly, when do you plan to bring this to the floor? She told me that I do not have a timeline, saying, quote, it will be decided on a rolling basis. But she noted it could be in the next 2 weeks. It could be on the next 2 months. So be on your toes, Kevin, and particularly Speaker Johnson, because this could really happen at a moment's notice.
Schnell, I don't know if I should be on my toes. I think you got to be on your toes with that. Do House Republicans really want to do this in an election year? Couldn't one make the case that keeping the government open is actually going to help them keep some of their districts and maybe even make some inroads in suburban districts? Or am I looking at this wrong?
No, the vast majority of Republicans do not want to go down this route. I spoke to them, a number of them, on Friday. They said this is not a good idea. This is going to add to the dysfunction. Members need to learn that you don't always get what you want. One member describing it to me as lessons you would teach to a toddler. So there are a lot of Republicans who don't want to go down this path, especially being that we are so close to the election in November. We saw how bad of dysfunction there was after Kevin McCarthy's ouster last year. Those 3 weeks of dysfunction, chaos, paralysis in the House. It took 4 candidates to finally find a new Speaker of the House. Republicans don't want to go back down that route again, but remember, because of the slim majority that Republicans have, which is just decreasing by the day as more Republicans retire from Congress before the end of their terms, it gets easier for one lawmaker, Marjorie Taylor Greene, to bring this to the floor. And depending on what Democrats do, and that's a whole other can of worms and a whole other conversation, Kevin, that we can't have if you want to, Speaker Johnson can live another day with the gavel, or he's going to have the same fate as Kevin McCarthy. Yeah,
but that's exactly my point. Is that is it really Speaker Johnson's fault, or is it actually the shrinking majority fault? And so he's in a rock and a hard place, because every time they try to turn on him, it's like, he has a smaller majority, and he could turn around to them and say, you're the reason my majority keeps shrinking.
I'll tell you, Kevin, the whole reason why we're going through this dates back to November of 2022. Republicans said they were going to have a red wave, that they were going to sweep a number of contests across the country, come to Washington, have this massive majority, be able to legislate. That didn't happen. They started Congress with a 4-seat majority, just being able to lose 4 members on any party line vote. So from the beginning, it was difficult. That has ticked down to 1 now, with Congressman Gallagher leaving next month. So you talk about, what is the reason here? This is just the reality of governing in divided Washington, where Democrats control the White House and Democrats control the Senate, and also legislating for Speaker Johnson with a very slim majority in the House. Now, that's reality, but that's not a reality that a number of hardline conservatives want to swallow. They think that Johnson should stick with them and force shutdowns and curry to their preferences, even though that won't get anything done in Washington, because Democrats control the White House and Democrats control the Senate. So Speaker Johnson is left with deciding between go and govern with reality, or give in to these hardline conservative concerns that really won't go anywhere.
Well, and you know who likes gridlock? The markets. The markets always do better when there's divided government and gridlock. And we're seeing that last week even. Meanwhile, from the right to the left is enraged about providing additional $4 billion worth of aid for Israel. So what gives? Is the left coalition falling apart for President Biden?
No, I think that a lot of progressive lawmakers are concerned about the humanitarian deaths in the Gaza Strip as the war between Israel and Hamas has dragged on. This is something that we've heard from a number of conservatives, Bernie Sanders, for example, conservatives in the House saying that they want to see conditions on additional aid sent to Israel. Now, that opens up another can of worms because, of course, the U.S. is Israel's closest ally, sends, assistance and aid over there unconditionally with no conditions. So I think we'll have to see how that plays out. But the vast majority of lawmakers up on Capitol Hill are supportive of sending aid to Israel without conditions. So, it could be a thorn in the side of President Biden as he looks for re-election in November. But in terms of sending aid to Israel, I don't think that's going to have too much of an effect on what it looks like at the end of the day.
And we've got much more on that UN Security Council vote coming up in the program. But first, is Ukraine aid going to pass? Because the smaller Republican majority, you mentioned Gallagher leaving office. I mean, it seems like this vote that Congressman Mychael has predicted will happen after Easter. So when they return from recess shortly thereafter, this vote on Ukraine aid, is it going to pass?
That's the million-dollar question. Yeah. But I think that before we talk about will it pass, I think we have to say, what does it look like, right? Democrats still want to see the Senate bill that passed with an overwhelming bipartisan majority. They want to see Johnson put that on the floor. Johnson has said he won't put that on the floor. He's consistently said that he wants to see border security paired with any aid to Ukraine. He told Republican senators a few weeks ago that he's going to put Ukraine aid on the floor, but it's going to look pretty different from that Senate bill. So we first have to see what exactly are going to be the contents of this legislation. Will it attract support from Democrats? Will enough Republicans be able to get on board to likely get over that 2/3 threshold needed when you pass something under suspension of the rules? Look, Kevin, I think at the end of the day, it does get over the finish line because there are just too many lawmakers on both sides of the aisle in both chambers sounding the alarm about the need for Ukraine to get more assistance. Speaker Johnson himself has said that he is supportive of sending more aid to Ukraine. He's been very critical of Russian President Vladimir Putin. But the real question is, how is he going to do it? What is this bill going to look like? And will he have the gavel afterwards? Because Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, she may have introduced this motion to vacate, filed it during the spending fight, but she's got her eyes on the fight over Ukraine. That has been her issue for months. That is likely when she will trigger this thing. Democrats, if Johnson does what they want and puts Ukraine on the floor that's palatable to them, they will likely save him. But then you have got a Republican speaker who's in office and in place because of Democratic support, which isn't a great situation.
Hey, Mychael Schnell, is Aaron Rodgers going to be America's vice president?
Look, I am a Giants fan, Kevin. So in terms of Aaron Rodgers keeping his job on the New York Jets, I couldn't really care less about that. So we'll have to see if he changes his job from Jets QB to RFK Jr. running mate. Listen, I don't know. I don't know who he's going to choose. But I'll tell you what, the fact that he's doing this and ginning up so much news coverage, RFK Jr., not a good sign for the Biden campaign. And they're definitely not loving it. As we know, third-party candidates really do have the potential to take off votes and peel off support from both sides. The DNC launching a new team to actually go against third-party candidates. They're nervous about this. So his announcement, having this big announcement, and news reports about his VP pick, not a good sign for the Biden campaign.
What's Nikki Haley going to do? I mean, we haven't talked about her in a minute.
Yeah, no, you're right. We haven't heard from Nikki Haley. She hasn't formally endorsed before, former President Trump. I'm also curious to see what kind of role she will play. She sort of left herself in a difficult position, right? You'd think that she would come back and endorse former President Trump after dropping out, let the Republican Party coalesce. But we'll remember she came out really hard against him in especially those final days of the primary. So that could be a tough move for her. I think a lot of folks are waiting to see what kind of role she'll play.
You think Lisa Murkowski is going to be a Republican by the time this cycle ends?
I do. Look, Lisa Murkowski, she's faced challenges before. Her constituents down in Alaska, they know what kind of Republican she is. They support her. I mean, remember when she lost the primary and then won in a write-in campaign a few years ago? They know what kind of Republican she is. She's going to stand her ground. She's got the support at home. I think she'll stay because, look, she's been this independent, moderate thinker for years now. Folks know who she is. I don't exactly see her leading the party. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
It's going to be interesting to see, though, because she's the one, her state is the one state where folks have figured out how to get away from the far MAGA right supporters, and she was able to outmaneuver them. So she's clearly an independent. It's going to be fascinating to see what she ultimately decides to do, but such a key voice in the Senate and such an important swing vote. Before I let you go, I do want to get your reaction to this former head of the RNC, Ronna McDaniel, joining NBC News as a contributor. I don't know if you saw this. Chuck Todd, he's the former moderator, of course, of Meet the Press. He said that the company, NBC, owes Kristen Welker an apology because they hired Ronna McDaniel. I mean, what gives? Are they not allowed to interview Republicans?
I mean, I think that some folks over there are probably frustrated that Ronna McDaniel had just left her perch at the RNC and then was brought in quickly to NBC as a paid contributor. In terms of the internal machinations there and how that went down, obviously I am not privy to that information. I'm not sure. So I think that Chuck Todd's point was they're unsure who Ronna McDaniel was speaking for, being that she was interviewed in a news capacity on NBC about her tenure as RNC chair while being a paid contributor of the network. So I don't know. We'll have to see that situation play out a little bit more. But yeah, it was definitely interesting to see a prominent figure at a network attack the network while on air of one of their most central news programs.
I don't know. I think it was Tim Russert, Buffalo's Tim Russert, who always would say, you got to hear from all sides. Like, I want to see Sean Spicer on MSNBC, and I want to see Rachel Maddow on Fox. I mean, people want the conversation. I got no beef with having Republicans and Democrats on the Sunday shows. Doesn't bother me at all. Mychael Schnell, excellent reporting, as always, my friend. Mychael Schnell, The Hill's Mychael Schnell. Thank you for breaking down all of the latest headlines. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.
Reproductive rights are back on the docket at the Supreme Court. On Tuesday, the justices will hear arguments on whether to limit access to the abortion medication mifepristone. The medication is used in more than 60% of abortions. It comes less than 2 years after the same court overturned Roe v. Wade. The case this week, brought by the Biden administration, is looking to reverse a lower court decision that would suspend the FDA's approval of the drug. Mifepristone was first approved in 2000 and has fewer risks than many well-known drugs like penicillin and Viagra. A decision on this case should come in June or July. The 4 accused men responsible for the Russia terror attack in a concert hall over the weekend appeared in court. The attack at Crocus City Hall left 137 people dead in Moscow, and those men are facing life behind bars. ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attack. Secretary of State Antony Blinken condemned the attack as heinous and sent condolences to the families impacted.
Colleagues, we appreciated the willingness of members of this council to take some of our edits and improve on this resolution. Still, certain key edits were ignored, including our request to add a condemnation of Hamas. And we did not agree with everything in the resolution. For that reason, we were unfortunately not able to vote yes.
The United Nations Security Council voted to demand a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war during the holy month of Ramadan. It's the first time the UN has approved such a measure. However, the United States abstained from the vote. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu canceled the planned delegation to the U.S. that was set to meet with Washington officials because the U.S. did not veto the measure. Now, though they did not veto, the U.S. said that the resolution could jeopardize the ongoing negotiations between Israel and Hamas to have Hamas release the hostages from its October 7th terror attack. In Israel last week, Secretary of State Antony Blinken has warned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that should they proceed in attacking Rafah, it would lead to Israel's isolation and further insurgency. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is heading to China, her second trip while leading the Treasury Department. The Biden administration has been adamant that it wants to responsibly manage the U.S. relationship with China, even as tensions continue to reverberate throughout the global economy. In the U.S., for example, the House of Representatives just passed legislation that would ban TikTok unless its Beijing parent company ByteDance divests from the platform. It's one of the many technology and trade disputes between the world's two largest economies. Boeing will soon be under new management. CEO David Calhoun said Monday that he would step down as the head of the company at the end of the year. No word yet on Calhoun's replacement, but it comes amidst a massive C-suite shakeup at Boeing. Boeing has been under fire recently after a series of mishaps, including a January 5th incident when a door panel blew out during an Alaskan Airlines flight. Support for Kate Middleton, Princess of Wales, is pouring in from U.S. leaders, including the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden. The Princess of Wales revealed last week that she is undergoing treatment for cancer. "You are brave. We love you," the First Lady posted on X. Meanwhile, Florida First Lady Casey DeSantis told Middleton online to stay strong and fight like hell. DeSantis has been open about her own cancer battle, which she overcame. That's it for today's Daily Debrief. My name is Kevin Cirilli. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel, and come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.